1874, Sartre died. His funeral, 4 days later, attracted a spontaneous crowd of more than 25,000 followers as it made its way through the Latin Quarter, past the cafes where he had written his finest works. The denizens of the left bank, the most disrespectful audience in the world, had come to pay their last respects to the most disrespectful hero of them all. From Sartre's writings. Man is condemned to be free. Existentialism and Humanism. The world of explanations and reasons is not that of existence. Nausea. The essential thing is contingency. In other words, by logical definition, existence is not necessity. To exist just means to be there. What exists simply appears and lets itself be encountered. You can never deduce it. Nausea. The first effect of existentialism is that it puts every man in possession of himself as he is, and places the entire responsibility for his existence upon his own shoulders. Existentialism and Humanism. It is inadmissible that a man should pass judgment on man. Existentialism does away with this sort of judgment. An existentialist will never take man as the end, since man is still to be determined. Existentialism and Humanism. Atheistic existentialism, of which I am a representative, maintains that if God doesn't exist, there is at least one being whose existence comes before its essence, that is, a being which exists before it can be defined by any conception of it. That being is man, or as Heidegger calls it, human reality. Man first of all exists, encounters himself, surges up in the world, and defines himself afterwards. Man is not definable because, to begin with, he is nothing. He will not be anything until later, and then he will be what he makes of himself. Existentialism and Humanism. Being is the world, the other. Nothingness is the human reality, the radical negation by means of which the world is revealed. Human reality is what causes this nothingness to be outside being and nothingness. Consciousness is complete emptiness, because the entire world is outside it, being and nothingness. My acts cause values to spring up like partridges, being and nothingness. Man is a useless passion, being and nothingness. Hell is other people, in camera. Chronology of Sartre's life. 1905. Jean-Paul Sartre born in Paris. 1906. Sartre's father dies. 1917. Sartre's mother marries Joseph Mancy. Sartre follows his mother and stepfather to La Rochelle. 1920. Sartre returns to Paris. 1924. Enters École Normale Supérieure. 1929. Meets Simone de Beauvoir. Finishes first in philosophy agrégation. 1931. Begins teaching at Le Havre. 1933. Spends a year in Berlin. 1938. Publication of La Nausée, Nausea, brings renown. 1939. Publication of Esquisse d'un théorie des émotions, sketch for a theory of the emotions, his first mature philosophical work. Outbreak of World War II, for which Sartre is responsible. Sartre called up and serves in meteorological unit. 1940 to 1941. Prisoner of war. 1943. Publication of L'être et le néant, Being and Nothingness, his major philosophical work. 1944. Starts magazine Les Temps Modernes. 1945. Publication of L'Existentialisme et un Humanisme, Existentialism and Humanism. End of the war and period of increasing fame begins for Sartre as leading exponent of existentialism. 1952. Becomes a Marxist. 1960. Publication of Critique de la raison dialectique, translated as Search for a Method. 1964. Publication of autobiography Les Mots, Words, turns down Nobel Prize. 1980. Death of Sartre in Paris, aged 74. Funeral becomes a public demonstration. Chronology of significant philosophical dates. 6th century BC. The beginning of Western philosophy with Thales of Miletus. End of 6th century BC. Death of Pythagoras. 399 BC. Socrates sentenced to death in Athens. Circa 387 BC, Plato founds the Academy in Athens, the first university. 335 BC, Aristotle founds the Lyceum in Athens, a rival school to the Academy. 324 AD. Emperor Constantine moves capital of Roman Empire to Byzantium. 400 AD. St. Augustine writes his Confessions, philosophy absorbed into Christian theology. 410 AD. Sack of Rome by Visigoths heralds opening of Dark Ages. 529 AD. Closure of Academy in Athens by Emperor Justinian marks end of Hellenic thought. Mid-13th century. Thomas Aquinas writes his Commentaries on Aristotle, era of scholasticism. 1453. Fall of Byzantium to Turks, end of Byzantine Empire. 1492. Columbus reaches America. Renaissance in Florence and revival of interest in Greek learning. 1543. Copernicus publishes On the Revolution of the Celestial Orbs, proving mathematically that the Earth revolves around the Sun. 1633. Galileo forced by Church to recant heliocentric theory of the universe. 1641. Descartes publishes his Meditations, the start of modern philosophy. 1677. Death of Spinoza allows publication of his Ethics. 1687. Newton publishes Principia, introducing concept of gravity. 1689. Locke publishes Essay Concerning Human Understanding, start of empiricism. 1710. Berkeley publishes Principles of Human Knowledge, advancing empiricism to new extremes. 1716. Death of Leibniz. 1739 to 1740. Hume publishes Treatise of Human Nature, taking empiricism to its logical limits. 1781. Kant, awakened from his dogmatic slumbers by Hume, publishes Critique of Pure Reason. Great era of German metaphysics begins. 1807. Hegel publishes The Phenomenology of Mind, high point of German metaphysics. 1818. Schopenhauer publishes The World as Will and Representation, introducing Indian philosophy into German metaphysics. 1889. Nietzsche, having declared God is dead, succumbs to madness in Turin. 1921. Wittgenstein publishes Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, claiming the final solution to the problems of philosophy. 1920s. Vienna Circle propounds logical positivism. 1927. Heidegger publishes Being and Time, heralding split between analytical and continental philosophy. 1943. Sartre publishes Being and Nothingness, advancing Heidegger's thought and instigating existentialism. 1953. Posthumous publication of Wittgenstein's Philosophical Investigations. High era of linguistic analysis. This concludes the reading of Jean-Paul Sartre in 90 Minutes by Paul Strathern. Copyright 1998 by Paul Strathern. This book was read by Robert Whitfield. This unabridged recording was published by arrangement with Ivan R.D., publisher, and was produced in 2007 by Blackstone Audiobooks Incorporated, which holds the copyright. Neither this recording nor any portion of it may be reproduced or used for any purpose without prior written authorization from Blackstone Audiobooks. If you would like to obtain a complete catalogue of our titles or our monthly update telling you about new releases and our new collection of books on CD and MP3, call 1-800-SAY-BOOK. That's 1-800-729-2665. You may also obtain the same information from our award-winning website. Our address, all one word, is www.blackstoneaudio.com. Thank you. Man is condemned to be free. Existentialism and Humanism. The world of explanations and reasons is not that of existence. Nausea. The essential thing is contingency. In other words, by the left bank, the most disrespectful audience in the world had come to pay their last respects to the most disrespectful hero of them all. From Sartre's Writings. The first effect of existentialism is that it puts every man in possession of himself as he is, and places the entire responsibility for his existence upon his own shoulders. Existentialism and Human. Before Sartre died. His funeral, 4 days later, attracted a spontaneous crowd of more than 25,000 followers as it made its way through the Latin Quarter, past the cafes where he had written his finest works. The denizens of logical definition, existence is not necessity. To exist just means to be there. What exists simply appears and lets itself be encountered. You can never deduce it. Nausea.